You could say mind-altering substances have had a long clinical trial. Indigenous people have taken psychotropics found in local plants and fungi for millennia as part of sacred healing and spiritual rituals.
Psychotropic substances were administered in many ways, eaten, sniffed, smoked, or even used to create an infused drink. And now there is physical evidence that the flower datura, a plant with powerful psychoactive properties, was used to induce altered states and inspire cave paintings among the Chumash people of Southern California.
The evidence for that? Chewed wads of the plant were stuffed into cave crevices the way you might stick a bit of gum on a wall. This was recently reported in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. David Wayne Robinson is an archaeologist in the School of Forensic and Applied Sciences at the University of Central Lancashire in the UK. Sandra Hernandez is a spokesperson for the Tejon Indian Tribe, which has links to the Chumash people. They shared the discovery made in Pinwheel Cave.
The most prominent thing that you see is this big red pinwheeling painting. And it has these this center spoke, this circular design in the middle, and radiating off it these sort of S-shaped sinuous designs that are a bit thicker at the base. And as the S shape tails off, it goes into these nice little filaments at the end.
Okay. I've been doing Devlin's initials backwards.
Thank you, sir.
Is this too small then?
We're okay.
That's a good size?
Yeah. Wait, you've been doing G and D?
No, I've been doing...
Or sorry, D.
I feel pretty excited.
And GHB.
We've been working here for
GHB?
a long time.
Yeah, like
now I think it's about...
So most of my work to date has been centered in Southern California. I've really focused on the landscape that I grew up in, because I think because of my knowledge of kind of the unique little aspects of where I grew up, it allows me to really help the Native communities who are disassociated from that landscape rediscover it. Because I can look at a photo that they may have of an elder and they don't know where that place is, but I've already been there, so I can help them find that place. So here at the Windwolves Preserve is its complexity and its connectivity and its cohesion. Because in California, everything's really broken apart, it's fragmented. It's as if you took a hammer to something and there's just little pieces that remain. When you're here, you can go over 96,000 acres that are continuous wilderness that have experienced the same changes at the same time. So you can not only see all the different changes that the ranching period had and the American period had in the landscape, but you can also walk into pristine areas where you can actually see regions of the California landscape that have all native plants and forests that have oak trees that are 2,000 years old. And it's a bit like stepping back in time. At the same time, the archaeology here is phenomenal. Though the ranchers did loot some of the sites, there's still hundreds of sites literally on the preserve that are intact that we can work with the Tejon community to better understand their history. People have been on this landscape since this landscape came into being. So around 10,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago, the Ice Age ended. And when the Ice Age ended, everything in this region shifted. We had giant lakes here, one giant lake that became small, shorter lakes. This region over here behind us went from being thick pine forest to eventually oak woodlands and grasslands. And people were here the entire time, modifying the landscape and working with it. So everything that we considered natural was actually an artifact of human culture. There was a researcher a few years ago who said that there's no medicinal plant that's been found to date that Native people didn't already have a use for. And I think that's a really good starting point. I mean, you've had people living in this landscape tens of thousands of years building this collective memory of how to relate to it and how to use it to the best. So when you walk through this place, you're also walking through like a kitchen with just tons of food options. You're walking through a utility store, a general store. You're walking through a place that has all the basic needs that you could get from a pharmacy. And that's the wonderful thing about these places, that there's this synergy going on with people and people in place. We have another plant that grows really heavily in the canyon called datura, which was means to personal and spiritual growth for a lot of the Native communities out here. We have native grasses that are growing just beyond the campground that were used as the foundation for the coiled baskets that they made. I mean, really in every direction that we look, there's something that's usable. I can say that the tribes that we work with today, we know are the direct descendants, and I think that's a really powerful thing, that we have people who we know that, for example, their great-great-grandparents were living in this canyon when the Europeans first got here and were the chiefs of this canyon. So I think that's a really interesting relationship we find ourselves in, and we're working with communities that have this incredibly deeply ingrained relationship to this place.
So it sounds like a pinwheel, and it gives it the name of the cave, which is the Pinwheel Cave. But you found something else stuffed into the walls, I understand. And what did you find?
Well, when we first went to the cave, we saw just fibrous material. In a lot of these pockets, there's these little pockets all over the ceiling, dozens and dozens of these, and there are shoved into them, crammed into them, it looks like very pulpy, woody material, fibrous material. Some of it's tannish, some of it's dark brown, and we didn't know exactly what they were.
I have joined a team of archaeologists as they travel to South Central California to conduct research for the Pinwheel Cave project. Like many other decorated caves in Chumash territory, Pinwheel Cave was only discovered recently. The surface of the inside of the cave contains several rock art elements, including a classic pinwheel and an anthropomorphic figure. These paintings are called pictographs.
But I don't know, since we've started working, it seems like there's a lot of activity going on around the cave, and actually quite a lot inside the cave, which kind of makes sense because, I mean, even if it was a private place for some people, it's not going to be like that probably all the time and for all the people who live here.
We are finding so many things, so many beads, so many points, I mean, so many things that I really wasn't sure we would if it was just an industrial site, that it seems like there was more occupation here than just the work, that people might have been sitting here and gazing out over the vista, or might have been more of just a relaxing area with some work.
It seems like this would be the more, I guess, center of the community or the tribe. It seemed like, because we found remains of lithics, points, beads, acorns, you know, several other things that may, you know, that give a better idea into everyday life.
But they appear to be this thing that we call quids in archaeology speak. And quids are chewed up material that you would chew usually on the side of your mouth. If you think of someone like chewing tobacco, it's kind of the same thing. You chew it on the side of the mouth and then you spit out the remains.
I think that it's important to kind of lay out overall that the Tejon tribe, we are Kitanamak, we are one of the tribes that used this central area, it being a place of sacredness for us, a place of gathering, and a place where ceremony was conducted. All those things being very important to us culturally.
Yeah, my name is Colin Rambo. I am the Cultural Resource Manager for the Tejon Indian Tribe, and also an adjunct professor of archaeology at Cal State Bakersfield. And I'm here today on Wind Wolves wearing both of those hats. So yeah, it's kind of interesting because I'm an archaeologist by training, so I have to constantly balance my desire to do science and balance that with my professional responsibility to ensure that tribal traditions are respected and honored on these types of projects. So the way I interpret my role in this particular sphere here is that I'm kind of like the bridge between the science that's going on here with your team and the connection to the tribe, because as an archaeologist, my job is to explain to the tribe what you guys are doing out here so that they can understand it and prepare questions that they have for when they come on their visits to better understand your work and understand how they can be a part of it. And that's the real value, is when these values between science and traditional cultural values overlap, which I've seen a lot of occurring. I mean, today we took a group of archaeologists and a tribal member to Pinwheel Cave, and we were talking about traditional tribal values, interpretations of rock art from both archaeologists and tribal members. So hearing those stories and seeing these interpretations play out in real time with both sets of people is really exciting for me, because that's my whole job, is to connect archaeologists with tribal members. That's how I interpret my job, and when it plays out like today, it's a very exciting thing for me.
What was the plant that you found?
Well, the plant, as it turned out to be, was Datura riti, which is the local version of what's called Jimson weed. plant. They have these big white, beautiful trumpet flowers.
And one key bit of information about this flower is it's a psychedelic, isn't it?
No, I think psychedelic is the wrong term.
Oh, goodness. How about hallucinogen?
Well, hallucinogen is a much better term. Because psychedelic is really linked towards LSD and a particular kind of imagery that arises through processed, manufactured drugs, and this is more of what's called an entheogen. And an entheogen is a plant that is revered and utilized by traditional peoples in a way that Sandra was talking about, in a sacred manner.
Right. Thank you so much for that clear definition, Dave, because I think that's what I get asked the most in terms of, I mean, even so much as, oh, okay, so your people got high, and it's like, no, we weren't getting high. We were ingesting plants to be able to procure vision and cure illness. That's what's stated in our tribal archives. So that's very important to understand. As tribal people throughout Indian country, we say drugs and alcohol were never traditional to us. Never. We ingested and partook of nature to be able to procure visions and cure illness. And I think that it's important to note that within our Kitanamak tribal archives, it stated that Datura was processed and drank. It was a drink. It also states that it left you dead, like a dead man all day. That's one of the actual quotes we have on it, as well as it was taken in several ceremonies 3 times, 3 days apart. So that's a really serious ceremony when you're talking about, spread over, this 9-day plus period of time.
And how do we know that's what they did?
In what sense?
That rock would be used for that purpose.
Generally speaking, when you find a flat rock that has a ring of asphaltum on it.
Oh, it's the asphaltum.
That's the cue. Generally the cue.
Okay.
To be fair, it might not be that.
Because there's nowhere. Usually you get it like an indentation, like a bedrock mortar of some sort.
Okay.
And there's nowhere at all in that one.
Yeah. So it is very odd in that capacity. It could have also simply, been very shortly used.
Yeah.
Do those notes say that they're for like adolescent ceremonies, for coming of age ceremonies?
Correct. It's often referenced more for young men coming through ceremonial rite and puberty times, that they were going to be linked up to their healers, to those spirits that would assist them throughout the rest of their future.
And Dave, what are the active ingredients in Datura that produce these visions?
There's a whole cocktail of different compounds that are in the plant. And the 2 most prominent are atropine and scopolamine. So these compounds affect the neuroreceptors in the brain. They can have very profound effects. So one of the common things that happens with the taking Datura is you get extreme dry mouth. And so, atropine is used for certain surgeries where you want to reduce the amount of fluid that's in the esophageal passageway. But it can create a scenario where you don't remember taking it and you completely accept whatever reality that is occurring. Oftentimes people report meeting and talking to people who perhaps lived in great distances, or they're people who have passed, and you'll be having conversations with them. Your landscape can entirely change, so you think you're in a completely different place. And so, it's a very powerful reality altering entheogen. And this is why you needed to have experienced elders, tribal elders, to look after initiates and people who took the Datura in its various ways, in order to make sure that they successfully navigated through this whole process.
The first time I saw rock art at Windwells Preserve, I remember it made my heart ache because it was I had never seen it before. Like, you see it in pictures or maybe like in history class or something, but I'd never seen it in person. And it was right there, and so real. And it felt like I was the first person to see it since the person that drew it, even though that's not true, but that's what it felt like because there was no one else around. It was just me and a coworker. So I remember it made my heart ache, and it was very moving, and it felt like it transported me back in time and then threw me back into the present. And since then I feel that similar thing anytime I see a new site or something like that. But yeah, moving and heart aching.
As you describe that, I would assume that, Sandra, if you could make your way through an experience like that and stay steady and not become too afraid, that would be a kind of passage into adulthood. It would open your mind and also strengthen confidence in yourself to be able to handle what comes your way.
Absolutely.
What I read about datura is that it's a very strong hallucinogen. In fact, it could be poisonous if too much of it is consumed. So does the evidence suggest, I mean, I guess it does, what you're saying, Sandra, is that the Chumash people would have known how to regulate this and know not to take too much of it?
Absolutely. Our California Indian people absolutely knew how to maintain and handle these awesome plants.
And can I say that our analyses, the archaeological analyses of these quids, confirm that?
Say more. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, so when we looked under magnification on these chews or quids, we found that they're very consistent in their size, and they were cut into shape, and then they were pounded, probably in a mortar and pestle, and then they were chewed. But they potentially were soaked, so they could have been first used as a drink, and then afterwards, sort of repurposed and chewed. We were not sure about that process, but certainly we can see that they're highly processed, and they're very careful in sort of the sizes that they're making.
And Dave, were you able to date the datura? How far back does it go? When was this cave in frequent use?
Yeah, so we did date with AMS dating of the radiocarbon dating of the chews, of the quids. They're called chews and quids interchangeably, so I kind of go back and forth with those. The earliest date we have goes back to 1530 AD, but that's a variable date, so it can date anywhere from about 1530 to about 1650. So the earliest date that we have pretty much is bang on around 1600 AD. And it continued through when the Spanish showed up in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and through the Mexican time period following that, all the way up through the gold rush and even into the mid 1800s.
And that would coincide with the tribal archives. While taken and notated in 1920, they were working with tribal consultants that had grown up through the 1800s. So
those of us who protect rock art sites on the National Forest and elsewhere, we have a tradition. And that's if we go to a rock art site as a team and there are Native Americans on the team, we always ask the permission of the oldest Native American with us if we can approach the rock art site. So I will ask Sandra Hernandez, please, may we have your permission to approach this rock art site?
This request, absolutely, I can honor this request, but I just definitely want to preface it with that's an acceptance of all those who walked before me. I'm no one and of no stature and of no elder status at all to accept that, fully and, and wholly as for what it is and what it would be had a true elder, been here. But absolutely respectfully, I accept, that in terms of the responsibility for our tribe in these moments here.
Thank you. We are most grateful. Thank you.
Although the use of psychotropics among indigenous people goes back much further than just a few hundred years. I was surprised to find that this was the first physical evidence that these substances were used in a cave art site. So I'm wondering, Dave, what were scientists basing their conclusions about substance use up until now if you didn't have the physical evidence?
Well, there's other places in the Americas where there is evidence. So they have found in archaeological deposits in the American Southwest, peyote and datura botanical remains that looks like they're part of the taking of those as entheogens as far back as maybe 3,000 years ago. And in the rock art in the American Southwest, there are images that appear to be linked to peyote and datura in many instances.
Why do I do what I do? Well, this job of mine, it's very rewarding. It came at like the perfect time. I was, in my life, I was just going, through a lot, in and out of jobs, and I could have ended up anywhere, and I ended up here, and I'm so grateful of it. I really needed something positive to do, like with myself, and here I can get that. And working here, it's changed me, the kind of person that I am. It's made me a better me. And I have like a newfound, respect for the land, just like everyone else that came, before me. The Native Americans to the ranchers and, now conservationists. And I don't make millions, but I'm not doing it for the money. I like, to look at it this way, like I'm leaving a legacy. Like we all are leaving a little piece of us here, from, the plants that we put in the ground to the knowledge that we're teaching, the students that come through our educational programs. Like people's lives are changed by the preserve, either working here or just visiting. And like everyone has that special, like, oh my gosh, moment when they first see the preserve, like I did. This land is everyone's land, like we're free and we're open to the public every single day. And, like no matter how the day goes, or, on the stressful days, whatever our workload is, like even on the great days, like all of those are just like components that make what I do worth it. And that's why I do this. Every time I think about it, it brings a tear to my eyes, because, like I'm part of something so much bigger than who I am. And I'm happy that, I can share this with everyone too.
The problem with identifying this stuff is that it's organic and it doesn't survive very well. And in datura, it grows everywhere, and it loves previous sites that used to be inhabited. It loves the soils there. So even if you found evidence like datura seeds in an archaeological excavation, you don't know if it's just residual from a plant that grew there, if people are actually using it.
Mm-hmm. Have either of you tried datura?
I have not.
I have not, but I'm not going to lie. I do stroke the trumpet leaves, hoping that something will happen, but nothing's happened to date.
Wait, you stroke the trumpet leaves, the leaves of the datura?
The actual flower, it produces this white trumpet-like flower. And I've been told of its toxicity, just the plant as a whole. And every now and then, I do grab a hold of the trumpet flower as I'm passing it, seeing if anything happened, but no, nothing.
Sandra, I understand that many Native American religious ceremonies, sacred ceremonies, like the chewing of datura, were outlawed in the 20th century. And why was that?
They were outlawed, and that was a direct result of laws that were enacted to wipe out our culture and wipe out our ceremonial knowledge and hand those things down to the generations that came after. Definitely very true. The Indian Religious Freedom Act that came about was enacted to bring the allowance of some of those ceremonies and rituals to make them not outlawed here.
Well, yeah, there's been a big struggle, especially with the taking of peyote in the American Southwest. A lot of legal battles and court battles, very famous cases where Native Americans who take peyote for similar reasons have been fighting into courts to get the rights to be able to do that. So this is a long struggle, and it's part of what she's talking about, this assault upon Native cultures that's been going on a long time.
I didn't expect it that it would be as beautiful as it is being in this place, and particularly inside the caves.
Dr. Eleni Katula of the University of Edinburgh has conducted RTI research on the pinwheel paintings. So if you go to the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences publication on our project, and you scroll all the way down through the text and the different images till you get to a part that shows links to our databases. You can see here data availability. You can see that there are links to some of the images that she produced. If you follow those links, you can then see some of the work that she performed on the paintings. So this is RTI, reflective transformation imaging. It's a technique where she photographs the rock art, but with light raking it from different directions, brings it into a program that then uses algorithms to allow you to do different manipulations of the light from different sources. You can remove the paint from the surface, or at least the color from the surface, so you can see the surface. And it allows you to look at the paintings in a D-stretch, which really enhances the reds. And so here you can see there's different colors of red that are in the painting, and that appears to show that there actually are different pigments that are utilized. Perhaps an earlier painting underneath the pinwheel that is partially covered or mostly covered by the actual large pinwheeling element. And you can go and you can explore this yourself by following the link. There also is the transmorphic figure, the link to the transmorph, and you can look at this yourself. It has all the same characteristics as the pinwheel painting in terms of the lighting effects, the D-stretch, which really enhances it. You can zoom into the head, and you can look at the antennae if you wish. But you can see it's a great technique to allow you to explore the paintings in your own time and for your own purposes, if you're doing research or if you just have your own particular interest to do with rock art.
Well, today, psychedelics such as psilocybin are being studied in labs and universities for treatment for all sorts of disorders, mood disorders, and even dementia. And I wonder if the two of you see a connection between the Western study of hallucinogens, mood-altering substances, and the indigenous use of them hundreds, even thousands of years ago.
I think there is a connection, and I think the connection has to do with the medicinal properties that a lot of these plants have. So datura is actually harvested for many medical applications currently by modern Western medicine. So like atropine is used as a stimulant for if you have a low heart rate, it can be used to increase your stimulant. And scopolamine is used as for motion sickness. So one time I went out to the Santa Cruz Island, one of the Chumash Islands, and I took a pill that had scopolamine in it. So I guess maybe I have tried a little bit of datura. But I think the thing about these plants is that healing isn't just a physical process; it's also sort of a psychic process. And getting in touch with the parts of your own psyche that really matter, and particularly when you're in these group contexts and you're taking, datura is a profoundly reality altering experience, and it's something that I think needs a lot of coming to terms with after it's been taken. So I think these plants performed a really important role in many societies to help them connect their own sort of spiritual health with their physical health. There was really no separation in most societies' ideas about that.
I guess I was trying to marry the ideas, Western science and indigenous knowledge. And I could only hope that some of the knowledge that our California Indian people held continues to furl out in all of us that are continuing some of the cultural work still for our tribes, so that those two, Western science and indigenous knowledge, continue to feed off of each other, and how they really do fit together. They seem to be on different ends of the spectrum, but I think that the more they marry into each other, the more answers we'll continue to have about, such magnificent nature.
Dave Robinson and Sandra Hernandez, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I always welcome the opportunity to talk about our beautiful California lands.